It may be agricultural purposes. It may be municipal. It may be used for power plants. It may be used by other industries. Water, when you are using for agriculture purposes, what you are giving is basically pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, you may use it for municipal purposes, municipal purposes, municipality consumption purposes. You are returning with human sewage, pharmaceuticals, surfactants, etc. So the water is returned with all these the contaminants. Now, if it is power plant, for power plants, is there anybody waiting? No. No. Power plants. In the power plants, what is happening is that actually the power plant they use power plants, as I have explained, that the working fluid is water. What is being done in the power plant is that the water is actually taken from a large water body. It has to be treated first before taking it into the boiler. So first it passes through the, if I just show you power plants, water from large water bodies. Large water bodies like rivers, canals, etc. Now, this water from the large canals, they are passed through water purifying plant, or we call it water treatment plant. Not purifying is not the right word. Water treatment plant, wherein these some objectionable contaminants must be removed. Contaminants must be into boiler. So water treatment plant, because why why it is required? Water treatment plant is required because the heat exchange takes place between the calorific value of the coal, burning coal, and the water. In between, you have got the tubes. Sometimes, if it is a fire tube boiler, inside there will be fire, outside there will be water. Let me see. Yes. Okay. So some objection, this water before the water is fed into the boiler, this has to be treated, and the objectionable chemicals must be reduced out. Why? Because the heat exchange will take place between the flame of the fire flame of the coal and the water. In between you will have the tubes. Sometimes the fire will be inside the tubes, we call it fire tube boilers. Sometimes the water will be inside the tubes, it will be called water tube boilers. So in any way, there has to be a heat exchange that should take place between the flame and the water. Now in between you have got the tubes, and when the heat exchange after over a period of time, when the water if the water quality is not controlled, what will happen is that the sedimentation will take place. It's almost like the human arteries. As we grow old, arteries gets clogged, and ram naam satya hai. So that kind of thing situation arises. So similarly, in case of boiler also, if the sedimentation takes place inside the tubes, the heat exchange becomes very less, and the efficiency of the power plant reduces considerably. So as a result, in order to avoid that sedimentation, the water treatment plant is there. Now, after this water is taken into the plant, the water circulates is all right, but at the same time, what happens is that this water which is coming out from the boiler is being, basically it has to be cooled by the cooling tower, and the cooling tower water, finally we have to leave it onto the large water bodies, as a result of which power plants, and then when the water is released, local temperature of the river increases to a certain extent, endangering the species in water. So these power plants, this kind of water, other industrial chemicals also. So we also draw water for other industries. They also release chemical pollutants and maybe organic wastes also, depending on the type of industries, organic wastes. So it is true that human activity, is there anybody outside? Yes. Okay. So other industries also, they release chemical pollutants and organic wastes depending on the type of industries. If it is a leather industry, one kind of chemical. If it's a chemical industry, paints and other things, it will be different kinds of pollutants that they will be releasing it. Now, so what are the first thing is that we will talk about the pathogens. First, different kinds of pollutants, out of which we will talk about pathogens first. These pathogens, they contaminate water and are responsible for spread of many contagious diseases. These pathogens grow actually in the host. These pathogens grow inside the host and spread diseases. You can write pathogens they are associated with water. Then we have got different kinds of bacteria. They spread, for example, cholera, bacillary dysentery, then you have got paratyphoid. These kinds of diseases, these bacteria. Then you have got viruses. So is there anybody? No. Viruses, hepatitis, Then you have different kinds of protozoa. They spread amoebic dysentery. Helminths, they spread parasitic worm. So these are the different kinds of uh, these are the different kinds of pathogens, bacteria, viruses, protozoa, helminths, which actually cause havoc to human lives, right? So the helminths is a parasitic worm which actually schistomiasis, Schistosomiasis, schistosomiasis, right? Okay. Now the next we shall discuss what is called OD wastes. OD wastes. OD wastes. What is OD waste? OD full form, OD is equal to oxygen demanding wastes. Oxygen demanding wastes. Now, actually, the quality of water also depends. We know that certain amount of dissolved oxygen is always present inside in the water. Dissolved oxygen is present in water. This dissolved oxygen actually is responsible for this DO, dissolved oxygen, is responsible for propagation and growth of aquatic, AQUATIC, aquatic what do you call aquatic plants and species. Dissolved oxygen is present in the water. This dissolved oxygen is responsible for the propagation and growth of aquatic plants and species. Now, if we throw organic wastes, for example, if we throw organic wastes, what will happen? The organic waste will demand, in order for it to get rotten and decomposition, some bacteria and viruses will form. Is there anybody outside? No. Okay. Now, in order for the aquatic plants and animals to survive in the water, we need certain amount of dissolved oxygen inside the water. Then only they can flourish. Now, when we throw biodegradable organic matter into the water body, what is happening? The microorganisms will grow. They will feed on this organic wastes, and for decomposition, they would be needing certain amount of oxygen, which it will take from the dissolved oxygen. This is called oxygen demanding wastes. Okay. So if we write it, we'll say biochemical oxygen. This is very important. Oxygen demand. Biochemical oxygen demand. In short form, we can write BOD. So we can write when biochemical when biodegradable matters, organics, wastes, or biodegradable wastes are thrown into water bodies, microorganisms feed on the wastes. Breaking them into simpler organic or maybe inorganic substances. Now, when this decomposition will take place, it will require oxygen. So we write when the decomposition of organic wastes take place in aerobic environment, what is aerobic environment? In presence of oxygen, where there is air, that is aerobic environment. Now the decomposition may take place when the oxygen is not present, and that kind of also take place. So therefore we have to specifically mention when the decomposition of organic wastes take place in aerobic environment, that is in presence of oxygen, the process produces some non-objectionable substances. Non-objectionable gases, we may call it substances, such as CO2, SO4, phosphates, nitrates, etc. So basically, if you can, you see, so we can write organic matter plus oxygen in presence of microorganisms you will produce something like CO2 plus H2O plus new cells plus stable products such as SO4, sulfate, phosphate, NO3, etc. Now, the same thing, if if the decomposition takes place without the presence of oxygen, we call it anaerobic decomposition. When sufficient oxygen is not available, anaerobic decomposition takes place by a completely different microorganisms. Microorganisms. This process, what is this process? Anaerobic decomposition. That means anaerobic decomposition produces products like hydrogen sulfide gas, ammonia, CH4. If you recall, CH4 is a greenhouse gas. If you recall, CH4, methane, is a greenhouse gas. Now, so this is, there are biological oxygen, the decomposition when it takes place. Is there anyone? No. So there are two types of decomposition takes place. One is the aerobic decomposition, another is anaerobic decomposition. So we can write organic wastes it produces CO2, H2O plus new cells it produces plus unstable products H2S NH3, CH4, etc. The amount of oxygen required by microorganisms is called biological oxygen demand, BOD. So, what is BOD? Biochemical oxygen demand. What is biochemical oxygen demand? The amount of oxygen required by microorganisms to oxidize organic wastes aerobically is called biochemical oxygen demand. BOD. BOD of two types. BOD actually is of two types. CBOD and NBOD. This is called carbonaceous biochemical oxygen demand, and NBOD is called nitrogenous biochemical oxygen demand. The the organic waste, which is more of a carbon content is there, we call it carbonaceous biochemical oxygen demand and nitrogenous biochemical oxygen demand. These are the two demands. There is a test, we call it 5-day BOD test. So what is happening? Page number 4 minus. Page number 4 minus. Date is 17/01/2022. 5-day BOD test. Now, before this 5-day BOD test, actually, the decomposition takes over a long period of time. Now, to experiment with that long period and coming to the conclusion as to what kind of what kind of oxygen it will be demanding over a period of its total decomposition, that's a very cumbersome process. But it is seen that the first 5 days, the oxygen demand is extremely high. Therefore, a 5-day BOD tests are being standardized. What is that 5-day BOD test? 5-day BOD test is that you take a sample sample water containing that biological wastes, Then it is defined, 5-day BOD test is defined as BOD 5 is equal to dissolved oxygen initial and dissolved oxygen DO final divided by P, where P is the dilution fraction. P is equal to dilution fraction. Dilution fraction is what? You take, let us say, 10 ml of water, that is volume of wastewater, divided by volume of wastewater plus volume of dilution water. What is volume of dilution water? You take, let us say, for 50 ml of water, you just pour in another 250 milliliter of dilution water, and then you carry out the tests. That is the dissolved oxygen initial stage, and after 5 days, dissolved oxygen after 5 days divided by the dilution fraction. So this is called the biological, 5-day biochemical oxygen demand test. Okay, so we shall take one example. A test bottle containing seeded dilution water has its dissolved oxygen level drop by 1.0 mg per liter in a 5-day test. A 300 ml BOD bottle is filled with a 300 ml BOD bottle is filled with 15 ml of wastewater and the rest with seeded dilution water. Expressed as dilution of 1:20. This is a standard one. Expressed. So a 300 ml BOD bottle is filled with 15 ml of wastewater and the rest with seeded dilution water. Seeded dilution water experiences a drop of 7.2 milligram per liter in the same time period. In the same time period. What will be the 5-day biochemical oxygen demand of the waste? Solution, very simple. The dilution factor, first of all, we find out dilution factor P is equal to the dilution factor P is equal to, we have taken 15 ml and we have made totally 300 ml. 15 by 300 is equal to 0.05. Now BOD 5 is equal to initial